Welcome to the Age UK Isle of Wight podcast, featuring Island Voices, brought to you today by Claire Shortman in association with Slingshot Records.
Good morning. Today we are with Joan. It's Age UK Isle of Wight, and we are talking with Joan today about some of her memories. Thank you ever so much for having us. Leave it with you.
Yeah.
Well, I will be 95 in 2 weeks' time, June the 10th, and I was born. Everyone asks me where I come from because of my mixed accents, and I always say I was a mongrel. I was born in Salford, and a lot of people say to me, well, don't boast about that. But I am proud to be a Lancastrian because everyone is very, very friendly. All the doors are always open. And I was born in Salford, and I lived there for 11 years. And then I moved to the Isle of Man, and then I moved to Sheffield, and then I moved to Liverpool. So most of the time I was in the north, but because of certain circumstances, I had to get away. I'd had a bit of a trauma, and I just saw an advert in the national paper to say that there was a flat in Ventnor in the Isle of Wight, and I was homeless at the time and staying with my sister in the Isle of Man. And I said, I'm writing to take this flat because I always do things on impulse all the time. I've done all my life, I've just decided to do things. So I wrote, and my brother-in-law had his arms round my neck crying, saying, you can't do that, Joan. You've got no money, no job, no home, and you can't just go to the Isle of Wight. And I just said, watch me. And I had my car, and I went down and I came to the Isle of Wight, and I've been living in the Isle of Wight now for 30 years.
Okay. So I'm going to take you back, Joan, if that's okay. We're going to go back a little bit. Salford. You were born at Salford, which is now part of Manchester, or Greater Manchester it's part of now, isn't it? But you describe yourself as a Lancastrian.
You daren't say it's part of Manchester.
I know, I'm teasing you.
It's Salford City.
I know, I'm teasing you. Okay. My dad's family are all from Manchester. Yeah, and I grew up in Lancaster, actually, which is just up the road.
Oh, I know Lancaster.
Yeah, so that's where I'm from London originally, but I grew up there because my dad went back north. And just hearing you talk about Salford, it's really in your heart, isn't it?
I do.
Yeah.
My Auntie Maggie, who was my father's sister, lived in a house just like Coronation Street. And the door was always open. Anyone could come in, just knock and walk in. No one got over the threshold before they were offered a cup of tea.
Okay.
And she was very, very strong woman. She worked as a tailoress in the Co-op, and she was what they called a finisher,
Okay.
which meant that she did the hand sewing of buttonholes and the hand sewing around the thing. And she was an amazing woman, very, very strong. And
Is that where you got your strength from? Your
I had a wonderfully happy childhood, in spite of many, many difficulties that we had. I had a wonderful childhood. When I was at college, I did advanced maths as well as geography and various other things, but I always say it's because my father, when I was 2.5, used to brush my hair every night and say, "Oh, come on, Joan, we're counting. We're doing 100 brushes." And he would start counting,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. And then the other thing was my Auntie Betty, who was my godmother and my mother's sister, the one who became a nurse. She used to say, "Now, you will never ever have indigestion if you chew your food properly, and
Okay.
it
Yeah.
must be a minimum of 40. So we're counting when you put your food in your mouth, and we're counting 1, 2, 3. And I think it sounds ridiculous, but I'm sure that those very, very early 2 and 3 and 4-year-old went on. I'm sure in some way it did influence me, and with numbers. And I know when I passed the scholarship when I was 9 to go to the direct grant school, they said no one has ever got every problem in that correct. The headmaster took me to the and I said, well, I didn't find it difficult.
I've got to ask a question. It's quite an important one. What on earth took you to Yorkshire and Sheffield?
Why did I
Yeah.
go to Sheffield?
Why would anybody from Lancashire
I went
go to
because
Yorkshire?
when I was 17, I was offered a place at Manchester University to do geography, but my parents couldn't afford for me to go. At that time, I had 3 younger sisters, and my father was out of work, and they couldn't afford. So I had to reject that offer at Manchester University. But we were living in the Isle of Man at the time, and the school I went to, which was Douglas High School for Girls, had a connection with Yorkshire, Sheffield Training College, and a lot of the pupils from Douglas High School, both for boys and for girls, 2 separate schools, had gone from the Isle of Man to Sheffield. And my very best friend at school, Vivian Kelly, who was Manx, as you can guess,
Yeah.
Kelly from the Isle of Man, she was a year older than me because I was in a class of children who were a year older than me, and she'd gone already to Sheffield Training College to train as a teacher. And so by that time my father joined the army. He'd been in the First World War, and after Dunkirk, he went down and asked if he could serve, be any use to them, and he was immediately grabbed with both hands and went in the army. And he borrowed money from the army, and I borrowed money from the Education Authority, and that was enough for me to pay to go to training college.
And what did you
in Sheffield.
What did you train as? Did you train as a teacher?
I trained as a primary and secondary school teacher.
Okay.
And it was a wonderful, wonderful college because it is just after the Education Act. And so when I first went in, it was mixed, but then when after my training, it was separated, and it was, with the school I went to, was infants and juniors. And we were taught at college so much, besides PE, religion, sewing, cookery, besides all the basic subjects like geography, history, maths, and I did advanced maths, and English language and English literature. Besides that, we were taught, so that when I did go into teaching in a very, very poor area of Liverpool, and it was called William Henry Street, the school, and I was able to take a group of children who were really deprived, and I was able to take them on holiday for 10 days, 30. I managed to persuade the staff to come, and we used to make, there was a place called Higson's in Liverpool that did egg flour. So I got in touch with them, and I got in touch with lots of businesses, and they gave us stuff. And the night before, we were there baking, because it was the school had a kitchen, and we were baking cakes and we bought bread in cheap, and we got all sorts, and we took, and I got in touch with the Education Authority in the Isle of Man and borrowed a school in Laxey.
Yeah, near the wheel.
And yes, and it was really quite near the beach.
Okay.
And so that was how I came to Sheffield.
Okay.
And I was there for 2 years, and I had a big adventure when I was there. Oh, I had several, but
One big one.
I don't know whether you want to hear about this.
I want to hear about the adventure. I
You
know
can't
Claire
tease
does.
us now.
Well, you see, because there were so many people from the Isle of Man, there was about 8, 9, 10 people in the Isle of Man, and of course my very, very best friend Vivian Kelly, she was there. And what we used to do, the boat to the Isle of Man left from Liverpool.
Yeah.
So we used to get the last tram from where we lived, well, the college, and I've just tried to think of the name of the road, into town, and it was after midnight, and it was the last tram. And then from there, we used to get the train to Manchester, to Piccadilly station in Manchester, and then we walked then from Piccadilly station across Manchester to Victoria station, and we got we had to wait then, and we got the first train that went to Liverpool, and then we got into Lime Street, and then from there we walked to the pier head, and I had my little attaché case, cardboard, with my initials on, JL, because I was still JL, even though before I was married I was JL as well. Anyway, this day, somehow I got separated from the group. I don't know why now. I can't remember why I got separated, but I arrived in Lime Street and I made my own way down to the pier head. And as I got with my ticket, as I got there, all my colleagues were on board the boat, and it started moving out.
Oh no.